the way that we talk about it internally, it's like, difficulty and suffering is a moat. Like if you don't know how to do this and it's fundamentally hard, that's great. Like I bet on our team. I think they're really smart. And as a result, if we can crack it, I think many others will give up along the way. It is just fundamentally like a hard problem. If you had to get a human to diagnose and investigate and help you resolve incidents at many thousands of companies across many different technology stacks, that's not something that any human has ever done before. We're building agents to go and debug and diagnose and investigate problems. Like, great, but how do you know if they're any good? And you can do that with a set of design partners of 5 to 10, 20 people, but like you're fundamentally going to be quite constrained by your ability to experiment and improve. And as we release these things, and obviously as our customers sort of start to adopt them, we will then be in the stage where, like, as we improve the system, we are doing that over many, many thousands of customers across many, many different industries, many, many different technology stacks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI Speedrun. I'm here with Stephen, the CEO of Incident.io. Welcome, Stephen.
Hey, how's it going, Danny?
One of the things that's really remarkable about your company is you guys have shipped a lot more AI across the full workflow of your product than most companies in dev tools. Can you give us like a brief overview of what has shipped in AI?
Sure thing. I would say that we started off with like kind of AI sprinkles, which would be, summarization. So taking an incident channel and helping you write a summary or an update or something like that. That's great. But if you like removed, GPT from the app, like a lot of it would still work. And we felt that we could go sort of further and, further and faster, honestly. So we then added a few sort of important other things. So we have a product called Scribe, which is like an AI note taker. So when an incident happens, it's really common that people will jump on a Zoom call or a bridge. So Scribe sits there, transcribes everything, but also captures like key moments from an incident and shares them with, stakeholders. So that's awesome. We then have chat. So the kind of default way that you can interact with our product is through Slack. So you do like /incident update, and that pops up like a form where you can enter things. That's really cool. We have an alternate way that you can do that, which is just say, like, you can literally @ incident in Slack and say, @ incident, can you write an update for this incident that's suitable for exec stakeholders, and then just pause it till I'm back in on Monday, and we sort of figure out everything that we need to do to go make that happen. And then the last one that we have is a product called Investigations, which you can think of as sort of like root cause analysis. So we're plugged into your monitoring tools, your feature flagging tools, your code, your logs, and we, when something goes wrong, we will go and run like a full investigation and a diagnosis to try and tell you what's happened and what you should do about it. So all of this sort of ends up linking together in that Scribe then gives us a bunch of context that we can then use in future investigations for other incidents. So it's kind of all that synced together nicely. So a few different things. There's probably a bunch that I'm not leaving there, but we only have 15 minutes, so I'll pause there.
So my first question for you is, can you rate from 1 to 5? When you think back to the first AI feature you built at Incident.io, how different was the idea versus what you ended up actually shipping?
Good question. And 5 is like the most
just
different?
night and day, like a different feature.
Sweet. I am going to say, honestly, like a 1 or a 2 in that. So what we started with was the like AI sprinkles view of the world, which is kind of take the workflows that everyone did and make them a little bit more like faster and more effective. So what that looked like in practice was kind of take everything that we know about an incident and try and draft a really good sort of overview of it. So like it wasn't really like pushing the boundaries. Like it was useful and a bunch of people use it, but kind of we knew what it would look like, and it wasn't beyond the realms of imagination. So like we know what we're going to ship, and we shipped it. And I think now where we are is like quite different to all of that stuff. So this is maybe like more toe in the water stuff.
Yeah, it's like learn by shipping incrementally.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
A second question for you. When now you're building a ton of AI features that are a lot like bigger swings, how different is customers' expectations of what's possible versus what your product team is actually finding is possible?
Great question. I'm going to put us at like a
Oh, you can't pick.
three. So I think it can't do
Yeah, you
threes.
can't pick. It's a cop out.
Sweet, I agree. My rule is I get people to rate things out of 10, but then you can't say seven because six is kind of bad and eight's quite good. So we are spiritually aligned. Um, I am gonna say I'm going to say two. So, good examples of this are like, so for example, it's really easy to build a very compelling demo that will go viral on Twitter with AI, and like we've seen that in incident management. There's it's basically sort of a small amount of work to get to something that looks great, and then it's like the rest of the owl to kind of actually make it work in practice. So I think the you could probably make any one of these systems work very good for an individual customer, but that doesn't sort of solve the generalizability gap for a company like ours to kind of go and do that for many others. So that's I think where one of the gaps is that like getting these things to reliably work at like 99% precision is quite hard in practice. And then I think the second thing is like we can only sort of operate off of the context and the information that we know. So a really good example I had today was like I was chatting with like CTO and leaders of a large company, and they wanted to know about the technical impact of systems, which I think we can do a good job of estimating that and providing updates. But then the sort of the business impact, that's a bit that's not as well instrumented as like the systems that we operate and Datadog and all of the observability stuff. So I think there are some fundamental gaps of like, okay, we don't necessarily have those systems that are kind of easy to kind of instrument and understand. But on the whole, I think these systems are remarkably powerful, and there's very little that like people dream up that isn't actually sort of possible in some shape or form, which is exciting to see because I think for a long time it was just nowhere.
This is something we hear a lot from our customers. Like when we talk to engineering leaders, they are like getting the sales pitches and seeing the demos, and they're getting a lot of like top down pressure from CEOs to be like, this is all possible now. Like, isn't it? Like, go run. And then we try to instrument things themselves, and they're like, don't know.
Yeah, and I think so for example, if we think about like automated root cause analysis, like ultimately that is making some people faster and more effective, which is great. But if you get it wrong, you're essentially making things quite actively worse. You're basically providing red herrings to people to distract them. So ultimately, like there's this idea of like precision and recall, right? Which is like precision is when I tell you something, how often am I right? And recall is of the things that I tell you, sort of how much of the total universe did I get? And for our problem, we need to be like a really high precision but potentially low recall system to start with. But imagine if we got most of the things, but we were only right 10% of the time, it would just be actively a lot worse. And I think that's quite different for other products and approaches. But it's more like you have to figure out exactly what matters for the specific problem that you're
Everyone
solving.
in AI is trying to trade off like accuracy versus speed, or like precision versus speed, and in incidents you think fast is everything, right? But you're like, okay, but if precision is wrong, you actually slow down an entire company, entire team.
Yeah, 100%.
Third question for you: where do your product team's best AI ideas come from?
Um, where did the best ideas come from? I think honestly, like a bunch of them from our team internally. Like, so we have the distinct advantage of being very, very heavy users of our own product, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Which means that like what all of the sharp edges are for things like drafting updates or wanting to understand and investigate things. That's fine as long as you sort of know that you are a particular archetype and type of team, and our experience is not going to be very generalizable to sort of a JP Morgan style problem. But like if you know what you have, then you have much faster loops. So I'd say there's a good part of that is we know what we want and we're not afraid to sort of do the faster horses versus car style stuff, which is like take customer feedback but be very um, I guess diligent and focused on like what we think our gut tells us on stuff. And then the other stuff is just obviously customers. So there's a remarkable amount of pull, like customer pull for anything to do with helping you know companies fix things faster with fewer people. And really the biggest lever on that is what we're building in investigations, which means that like everyone kind of knows what they want it to do. And most of the challenge is in like the getting it to work reliably at scale problem. And it's less about like the, do you want something that helps you investigate and tell you when things are wrong? It's like, yeah, everyone's wanted that for like 50 years. So it's not necessarily the kind of hadn't thought about it. It's more of the challenge sits in the like actually doing it in practice. But there's lots of things around the edges where I think there's obviously kind of incremental good suggestions as well. So TLDR, mostly team, but blended with some customer feedback.
Something I'm wondering, when you think about how your product is evolving and you imagine it 5 years from now with everything happening in AI, how different do you think the product will look?
5 out of 5, no cop outs here. So to me, like there's sort of three versions of the world that I think we're navigating. So the first is, before tools like us were on the scene, people would use, tools like PagerDuty and OpsGenie, and these tools were mostly focused on waking people up to tell them that something went wrong, but there was not a huge amount of software after you'd been woken up. That's sort of like V0. I would then say like V1 was us kind of taking that place, after you've been woken up to deal with the problem, but mostly sort of still focused on kind of removing stuff from your plate during an incident. So helping you communicate, helping you coordinate and sort of follow up afterwards. But so crucially, we don't actually help you solve the problem at hand. We are like a process automation and workflow tool. And I think sort of V2 of the world is then we do everything across all aspects of that and help you debug and diagnose whatever specific issue you're looking into, whether that is a security breach at your perimeter, whether that is a global outage on AWS, whether that is someone is ham-fisted like a production migration in MySQL. All of those things we should be able to help you do. And I think a good way to view our business is sort of we've been building each incremental, I don't know, it's like a butterfly or something, right? Like, there's sort of many different stages where the company looks quite different. And I think a solid argument you could make is that we've sort of built this version of the company to be able to build the next version of the company, which is then around sort of having a ton of customers, broad adoption, which then allows us to build much more of the AI native, the help you solve your specific problem in hand. And that's much harder to bootstrap if you don't have any customers in the first place. Whereas now I think we're sort of well placed to go do that. So it will look materially different. It will look much more like something that helps you fix things alongside you. And I'm excited to get there. It's going to take a
It's
while.
like incident management is sort of imperfect everywhere. It's sort of a very human process, because there's a lot of it's about communication, about psychology, as well as fixing, and so you're basically saying like, okay, years of experience deploying our products across different size customers allows us to build this in an AI native way that makes sense versus taking guesses and trying to be too prescriptive.
Yes, I think it's that. It's also then crucially like, for example, like we're building agents to go and debug and diagnose and investigate problems. Like, great, but how do you know if they're any
Hmm.
good? And you can do that with a set of design partners of 5 to 10, 20 people, but like you're fundamentally going to be quite constrained by your ability to experiment and improve. And as we release these things, and obviously as our customers sort of start to adopt them, we will then be in the stage where like as we improve the system, we are doing that over many many thousands of customers across many many different industries, many many different technology stacks. And it's like sort of what is the how do you get to scale the fastest, I think will then be the kind of uh, the thing that drives the success of the company. Whereas previously, there would mostly been a kind of differentiation based on product taste and intuition. And this will now give us kind of an ability to experiment and iterate, I think, a lot faster than others. So sort of interesting in that like everything's always shifting, and we're sort of trying to figure out, what the next version of the company is. And I think, having, even though we're not huge yet by any means, so as a result, like there's still many, many people we'd still love to work with. But we're at the stage now where kind of snowball is starting to roll down the hill a bit and picking up at least a little bit of initial momentum, which then helps us iterate sort of incrementally faster than competitors and kind of go around the loop as fast as
That's
we
so
can.
cool. Basically, everyone talks about the network effect in AI being training data, but you're saying it's actually even more powerful as evals. It's the ability to ship with quality.
Yes, I did want to talk about this because uh, we went through the sort of valley of despair. Makes it sound a bit negative, but you can sort of start off with like vibe coded systems, and for a bunch of these systems that actually works reasonably well. For us, we want to. So if I break down what we built, we have a multi agent system that attempts to investigate sort of what has gone wrong, and that breaks down into a system that looks at telemetry and APM data, a system that reviews all past incidents you've ever run with us, something that reviews Slack and Teams for all relevant information, just like N of these things. And it's like, okay, so how do you evaluate what an interesting Slack message is? It's like, that is not clear at all how you would do that. So as a result, we had to spend a lot of time building out like fundamental infrastructure to allow us to run back tests across all of these things reliably and predictably. So we can say, hey, swap GPT-4 for Claude and see what any incremental difference is. And that took a long time to get to, but is really, really powerful. And then it also means that now we can, with every single tweak that we make, we can actually prove how it gets better. But you then, a big part of the challenge still remains in like, how do you crisply identify what good a good eval is, and that might be quite easy for something which is like this code change caused this sentry error which caused this alert. It's like, cool, distinctive link between all of those things. There's not really a predictive link between someone running a migration in Slack, posting about it in an engineering channel 2 weeks ago, and then something happening over here, and you have to sort of develop good ways to evaluate that. So that has always been the like most that's been the hardest part of the problem, I think, for us to solve. But it's like, if you get it right, it's a kind of, it's a function that sort of speeds up your progress over time.
So this brings me to my last question for you. I'm wondering, as you're working through the sort of like these tricky problems in AI, are there things that you find yourself repeating to your team about AI or about building with AI?
Yeah. Um, I think it's mostly that we have built a product up until this point where the actual R&D sort of execution risk has been relatively low. It's like it is fundamentally possible to build a product that integrates with Slack and provides forms, a lovely experience, and all of it is around like the details of how we do that and how we parallelize amongst our teams to deliver it. But we haven't spent very much time of our company's life building something where it's really unclear if it actually can be built in the first place. And I think the sort of muscle that I keep wanting the team to to build and grow is this sort of, it's hard, just keep going. Because the way that we talk about it internally, it's like, difficulty and suffering is a moat. Like if you don't know how to do this and it's fundamentally hard, that's great. Like I bet on our team. I think they're really smart. And as a result, if we can crack it, I think many others will give up along the way. And you can sort of see, we talk about it internally as like the vibometer. It's like, one week the team is like the highest of the highs, and it's like, oh my God, like, this system is going to be amazing. Like it got everything right. And then, next week is like, it's never going to work. Shut it all down. It hasn't got anything right. And like, it's ultimately sort of like the highs are not so high, the lows are not so low. Like let's, uh, fundamentally, like this stuff is hard for a reason, and that reason is because it is just fundamentally like a hard problem. If you had to get a human to diagnose and investigate and help you resolve incidents at many thousands of companies across many different technology stacks, that's not something that any human has ever done before. So as a result, just keep going. I think we can crack it, and don't let yourself get down, and killed by the bad vibes.
That's so inspiring. I'm going to start saying that in our company too.
Yeah, hey, feel free to steal any of
Stephen,
it.
thank you so much. Where can people follow you, try your product, follow the work that you guys are doing?
Yes. So The company name is the domain name, which is pretty handy. So incident.io. So you can either sign up for a trial if you just want to get into the product, or if you're a little bit bigger, you can come talk to our lovely sales team. We are obnoxiously loud on the internet. So if you haven't seen us on LinkedIn, hopefully you will soon. Feel free to kind of connect with either me or the company there. Yeah, in general, just like we're super open to chatting, even if it's just about learning about how people are running incidents. So if in doubt, come have a chat with us. We are friendly
Stephen,
people.
this was so fun. Thank you so much.